Welcome back to Frankie Off Grid. If you're new here, we're Carissa and Iwan, and back in 2020 we moved from North Wales and bought a small plot of land with an old granite stone ruin in central Portugal. With a small budget of €10,000 and in the midst of the COVID pandemic, we packed up our cute and cramped rented cottage in North Wales and, with our sausage dog Frankie in tow, drove to central Portugal, where the land was cheap and the sun shined for 300 days of the year. We found a perfect little plot for us, a small granite stone building sitting nestled in 2,000 metres squared of olive trees and grapevines. Our original and naive plan had just been to build a simple wooden cabin and mostly live outside. We thought we'd have the infrastructure set up in no time and soon be living a carefree life as homesteaders, making our own wine, growing our own food, and continuing to work on our online businesses. However, the story so far has gone a little differently. Firstly, tackling the stone building was a much bigger undertaking than the little cabin we'd dreamed of building. The 300 days of sunshine I'd read about involved 3 months of a relentless summer with scorching temperatures, wildfires, and months without a drop of rain that sucked the land into a dry dust bowl. Not the easiest for growing my long dreamt of veggie garden. And those 60 days of rain we did get usually meant torrential downpours. I think if I had known what I know now, I would have felt too unprepared to have tackled the adventure of moving to a foreign country to try to build our own home and start a new life from scratch on a tiny budget with no experience. Thank goodness naivety allowed us to make the blind leap. We've had to learn so much in the last 3 years and still have much to learn and do, but I'm so glad we were carefree and took the risk. I'll start at the beginning now though, back in January of 2021, when we first decided to start filming to document our project for friends and family. And this is our barn building that will eventually become a home. There is so much we had taken for granted living in a regular house. One of the first things we had to learn about was compost toilets, and there's a book called Humanure which is actually kind of fascinating and made solving our first problem a fairly simple solution. Secondly, as we had spent time living and travelling in our van before, we had gotten pretty adept at making simple meals on our gas camping stove. Water-wise, luckily there is plenty of springs in Portugal you can collect drinking water from. We do have 3 wells on the land, filled with frogs, pondweed and algae, so we certainly weren't going to chance drinking from any of them. The winter nights drop below zero, which is pretty cold when you're living in a badly insulated van. We brought down sleeping bags. These have been lifesavers. And being Welsh, we're pretty good at being cold. You just need the right clothing and sufficient layers. We made fires outside in the evenings and huddled around them. The difficult days and nights were when it rained. Then we just sat in the leaking barn with the wooden doors closed, mostly in the dark, with layers and layers of clothes and down jackets on, wondering what on earth had we gotten ourselves into. Keeping clean was a pretty horrible experience. A cold bucket of cold well water while stood naked inside a cold stone barn. A kettle boiled on the camping stove took a slight edge off the cold water, but I think we were pretty smelly most of that winter. As we had originally planned to build a wooden cabin, that is something we had done a little research on, so we set about building a little cabin to sleep in. The tricky part was that Portugal was back in a lockdown and sourcing materials was a bit of a challenge. Also, the only other thing we'd ever built was a shed in our allotment back in Wales, and that shed one day blew away. But I am happy to say our cabin is still standing today. Secondly, we needed to sort out the building, which is divided in 2. There's the big main granite building, and then on the side of that is the half granite and half breeze block building that is now our kitchen. We started working on that and sealed the roof with foam to stop the wind and rain blowing through, and to also try to deter the snakes, toads and mice that were living in there with us. We reconstructed the doors with huge plexiglass windows so we wouldn't be sitting in the dark on the rainy days. We'd not yet realised what a Portuguese summer was like, and at the time light was what we longed for. We rigged together some counters for the kitchen so that we could have a sink to wash up in, saving our backs as we'd been washing up crouched over a bucket. We also bought a small gas heater to try and keep warm inside. I started on my veggie garden, the part of living here that I was most excited about, and we adopted Albi the cat to help with the mice. She's one of the weirdest cats I've ever met, makes us giggle so much and loves the fuss. She wasn't so great at catching mice. Crickets were her forte, and once I did catch her with a small snake in her mouth. Spring came along and was such a relief after winter. Our questioning of what on earth were we doing turned into joy as the land blossomed, The warmth of the sun felt heavenly, and we started to think maybe this had been a great idea after all. At this point, our biggest struggle was electricity. Though we didn't need it for much, the biggest stress was that we needed to keep our laptops and phone charged so that we could continue to work. The leisure battery in the van didn't charge very much as we weren't driving very far and we didn't have any solar panels. We bought a very noisy petrol generator as we needed it for pumping water out of the well for the garden and washing up. I had contacted a local solar power company who quoted us €6,000 for their most basic system, something we just didn't have the budget for. We found a USB powered pump shower, built a small outdoor bathroom space and moved out of the van and into the cabin. April is infamous for its rain, and then May comes in scorching and gave us a hint of what was to come. I think because of the heat we've kind of started a few projects and they've just taken a long time or being half abandoned at the moment because we're only having a few hours that are really comfortable to work in. I'd say that one of the other big struggles we faced that first 6 months was not having a community. Another thing we hadn't realised we'd taken for granted in life was the people you can lean on, whether that's your family or friends. Ken from OK Portugal had reached out to me to design his logo, and we met him and Gina and all became good friends. Through them, we met Nick and Andrea, and as you'll see through the years, they have been absolute rocks for us. As the weather heated up, Nick offered to come and help us fix our leaking water tank. He knew the heat we still hadn't realised we were about to suffer. The garden did pretty well that year, especially the tomatoes which we sun-dried. And we were given a bucket of plums from our neighbour which we turned into wine. When me and Iwan met, we were both working with wine, and one of Iwan's dreams was to make his own. So finding ourselves with so many vines was pretty exciting.
Monster.
We also experimented with any other fruit we could get our hands on. Another thing that we didn't share but that was happening in the background is that there was an issue with the house ownership. Yeah, we've had some stressful stuff going on that I will not talk about yet because I don't think it's good to talk about stuff until you're on the other side of it. The land and houses here are sometimes divided quite unexpectedly, with small pockets of land lost amidst uncertain borders, and it turned out that our neighbour actually owned half of our home, something that I've seen happen a few times around here. And as there are a few ways the land designation is registered, our lawyer had somehow missed that fact when we signed the deeds. Laws have now changed on the way land is divided, so we couldn't just buy him out of the other half of the house. We had to buy his entire deed, which included his land a similar size to ours. I won't go too much into the ins and outs, but we're grateful that he was willing to sell us something that he wasn't planning to sell. His quinta had belonged to his father, and we couldn't live on the land without the habitation licence that came with the house. So we settled on a price of €15,000, and with the help of all our family members and a loan, we managed to cobble it together. We have a few big cork oaks on our land, which are harvested every 9 years, and coincidentally, our first summer 2 of them were ready for harvest. Our neighbour put us in touch with a descortisador, a cork harvesting expert who paid us €40 for our 2 trees worth of cork, and it was really cool to see these professionals working with the trees. The rest of that summer was pretty brutal, with temperatures reaching 46 degrees Celsius. The concrete roof on the buildings baked, making the rooms hotter than outside and providing us with no escape other than to cower under trees and a shade umbrella we'd bought. Mostly we hid from the sun, with the occasional lake swim.
Come on.
We ate a lot of figs and emptied the hay from the barn since we were now in the process of making it officially ours. Oh, and our YouTube channel got monetised, which we couldn't quite believe. Thanks so much to you guys who started watching us and suffered through our terrible filming, editing and sound issues. We still have a lot to learn with that. September came along, and that means grape harvest time. Iwan had done a lot of research, and with our background in wine and a grape harvest we did in Germany in 2018, we sort of knew what we were doing. We only had the basics, a big bucket and our feet for stomping, but winemaking can be super simple. With natural yeast already present in the grapes and a few demijohns to store it in, our first vintage turned out alright. Iwan's mum Sian came to visit and brought with her some incredible tea and coffee, as well as some Welsh ring. We were overjoyed with nearly 3 months without a drop, but I think she was a little disappointed having come from Wales to escape the wet. Our roof leaked a lot, and after some good chats and advice from Nick, who is now our honorary uncle, we started working on the stone walls inside the kitchen. We also finally saved up enough and bought a power bank and some solar panels from Bluetti. Joao the black kitten from one of our neighbours' kinders decided to move in with us. Aside from March, October is my other favourite month here. The weather is perfect and the garden thrives, and so did our wall restoring skills. Nick came and helped us replace a horrible roof with insulated sandwich panels, and Iwan pointed the outside wall to try and reduce the leaks we get when it rains. Spoiler alert, we still have a few leaks. Replacing the roof proved to us quite how wonky our building was, as the roof fit at the back but left a gap at the front as the wall was seemingly built after a few too many superblocks. Nick's never-ending creativity had us knocking a hole in and adding some clear roof tiles to make a little window that offers a great little spot of sunshine in the kitchen. October is also when we finally received our Portuguese residency. Brexit had happened on December 31st, 2020, and I had had many stress-filled conversations with Seth over the year, the border control in Portugal, about whether we were now allowed to stay in Portugal as the 3-month Schengen zone rules had begun. With a combination of COVID, issues with Seth itself, and the new experience of Brexit, it had taken 11 months for us to officially become legal residents. Iwan was missing one of his favourite pastimes, which is climbing. So when we accidentally threw a frisbee in the well, he took it upon himself to practice his rope access and abseiled into the well, a skill that has come in handy a few times. We paused from working on the kitchen walls to pick our olives in November. We now had about 100 trees with the new neighbouring land, and with the help of our Dutch friends Janine and Thomas, we were able to pick nearly 500 kilos of olives, which, after paying the lagar, or olive press, in olive oil for the pressing service, we had about 44 litres of our own oil, which has lasted us 2 years. In November, we finally signed the deeds for next door. Our home was officially ours. Both pieces of land need a lot of love. The trees need pruning, and it was originally used to grow hay for animals, so the grass grows at an alarming rate. I'm not sure how many hours Iwan has spent trimming grass. We had come full circle and survived 1 year on the land and were really starting to feel at home, but we were about to face a very difficult December. We decided, as we were now allowed to, that we'd travel back to Wales for Christmas to see friends and family. Gina had kindly offered to feed Albi and Joao whilst we were away, and we were a little anxious to leave our home and spend the 3 days driving the 1,500 miles. COVID was still very present at this time, and the stress of working out all the tests and vaccine passports and whether there would be another lockdown was very overwhelming. Good morning.
It's not a good morning.
It's not a good morning. I've got quite the story for you. When we finally arrived at Calais, as we checked Frankie in, we were told that our COVID tests were too old by a few hours. There were many mixed messages online as to whether it's 48 hours since a test before travel. There was a pharmacy nearby that we could rush to and be put on the next train, but when they checked Frankie's passport, they told us she couldn't travel. When we had taken her to the vets for her worming tablet, a requirement to enter the UK with a dog, they had noted that her rabies jab had expired. They gave her a new one and hinted that we might have trouble crossing the border as you need to wait 21 days since the jab. We foolishly hadn't realised how seriously this is taken by the border crossing, and I think all the COVID chaos had also clouded our brains. I'll not dwell here too much, but we took a detour to the Netherlands as we drove home. There was no way we were going to leave Frankie in a random kennels, and there our van broke down. I'll never forget the kindness we were shown by the community we had built here on YouTube, as we were inundated with offers of help, donations to help with the cost of the engine repair, and offers of places to stay. As you'll see throughout the second year, we've been put in the path of some incredibly generous people, and my heart has been filled with the goodness of people. Something we're not often shown in the news these days. We made it back to our home in Portugal in time for Christmas, tried to make some mince pies in our uni pizza oven, then January came around and we got stuck back into our project. Before we move into the second year, I'd just like to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Squarespace, who have sponsored us throughout 2023, so it felt like it made sense to include them in this recap. Apart from having excellent choice in content creators, Squarespace also make beautiful websites. If you're a creative, a solo entrepreneur, or a business owner with a large team, then Squarespace can empower you to create a powerful online presence, engage with your audience, and sell anything, whether it's a product, your content, or your time all in one place. But my favourite feature is their award-winning templates, which are beautiful and help you to very quickly achieve a sleek and professional looking site, even if this is your first time creating one. And one of the final features that I really love about Squarespace is their editing interface, which is called Fluid Engine, and it makes it really easy to move around all the elements of your site, from the text to the imagery or whatever you're putting on there. Really simple and easy to use, and if you are ever struggling, they do have fantastic 24/7 customer support to help you with your website building, so you can always check in with someone if you are struggling a bit, if you're building something a little bit more intricate. Head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/FrankieOffGrid to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. All links will be in our description below, and thank you so much to Squarespace for sponsoring today's video and supporting our project. Moving stuff around in here, and you can see how bad the floor is here.
trying to do. Get the air out of it.
The room is once again empty. I've just cut off all the excess plastic. Just gonna hoover in here now, and then we're gonna put the PVA solution on. And I'm realising, because we had to dig out the floor more when we were playing it, we've got so much of this that it's just all crumbly, that I'm gonna try and hoover as much off as possible. And then in the next couple of weeks we'll come in and point all along the bottom. That, I believe, is an old wasp's nest. That's how big the holes are in this wall. Crazy. So I'm going to use a pointing key to try and get it out.
Say that again.
We've got 2 eggs.
2 eggs.
Who laid it? Who laid it?
Who laid it?
Was it you, Ali?
So we said when we hit 10,000 subscribers we would film a Q&A. So here it is, because we hit 10,000. I think we're like 10,024.
bin.
Albi Tinto. It says Mark as this was intended for Iwan's mum for Christmas, but we never made it home for Christmas, so sorry Sian, we're drinking it.
Basically, on your hook, get some muck, take it off the hook onto your trowel, and then literally onto the wall, like so. Yeah, and then just keep repeating that. It's going to be a bit weird because your wall's not flat, so you're going to have to choose like go. Which sticks out here. Obviously, if you put a line, it's going to miss lots. And then just
Thanks.
keep repeating the process. So go for it.
Cool. Have to pick it up like that.
Yeah, just scoop it onto. Yeah, lovely homemade hook.
I know, right? With an olive handle.
Oh, cool.
Okay, so then like that.
Yeah. Try and, so what you need to do is try and flick it onto your trowel, yeah?
Okay.
So I need to be holding that. Yeah,
And then on and up.
yeah. There you go.
Easy.
If you push more push it into the wall more,
Yeah.
it will stick better to the wall. It sounds like crazy, but it will, yeah?
Like so.
Like that, yeah? So just keep going, and I'll start this end. You have to find out where the curves, best way the curves flow. You know.
Oh my gosh. Albi.
Schoolboy error. At least that one's a cat print.
I just finished sponging.
Let's leave that one there.
Okay, that's the Albi print. I'll try and sponge that back in.
We need to close the window.
I think it's too deep.
I'll go for it, just give it some.
Yeah, but we're gonna have a dip then.
Hey.
Okay, guys.
Say bye, Frankie. Come on. under part of his wings.
We cut this off and then kind of curve it up somehow. Hello, Albs.
Broke a piece of scrum, my bag. Ready? Go.
Yes! would be this one.
We're doing with the 3 holes.
So you need to push them.
Yeah, good. It's easier. Ready?
Yeah.
2.
Did not plan on this taking so long and so much sweat. There we go. So I have been pottering. This is what it is looking like in here so far. How beautiful. Door, which is now this that we made. This is a temporary door. We are planning to maybe put sliding French doors in there eventually, but it's been amazing to let light in because the old barn door did not. But we have kept the wood of the old barn door, so I wanted to incorporate it somehow. So I'm planning today to work on making sort of a spice rack shelving thing with the old wood. It just needs a bit of TLC, some sanding and some oiling. You're like in your little sleeping bag there.
Happy beans.